Welcome to Busted Speakers, I'm Alex.
And I'm Cam.
And today we're reviewing the 17th album by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Ghosteen. I first came across Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds from their 2013 album, Push the Skyway. I think I heard of it from some best of lists of the year, just generally good reviews. Saw it in a store, and fell in love with it. Completely different vibe, weird, avant-garde, experimental, esoteric lyrics. That album was already doing away with the Bad Seeds formula of post-punk blues, alternative piano rock, very sketchy instrumental ideas. There's only guitar on 2 songs. The title track is one of my favourites, and that began the sort of ambient sort of musical adventures that Nick Cave has undertaken. Then tragedy struck. His son passed away in 2015, which is informed directly on his 2016 album Skeleton Tree. Although the songs had already been written, you can definitely tell from his delivery and performances and improvised lyrics the content of that album. I was unsure where he'd take the rest of his career, so the continuation into Ghosteen of just exploring where he is now, how he's come to accept that, where his life is now, and coming to terms with everything, makes Ghosteen an ending to the trilogy. It's a trilogy that began with Push the Skyway, became a tragedy. How were your experiences listening to this, Cam?
My first time through, I caught myself thinking, okay, I can't be too far into it. I don't think I've listened to that much of it, but then it turned out I was already on to disc 2, so to speak, because it's just digital at the moment. So I'm like, okay, this is definitely an album that is going to require closer attention, and it's not a bad thing that it breezed by me, because it was a pleasant listen. You know, it's something that seems like I could just put it on just for some calming sounds, but also knowing Nick Cave's reputation as, you know, a thoughtful songwriter, I knew that there's probably more depth to it than my admittedly pretty shallow first listen would have led me to believe if I didn't know better. And repeated listens have definitely confirmed that there's a lot more to this album than what it might seem like at first, like just, you know, ambient whistly synths and that kind of thing. I was surprised on second and third listen at how much there was of strings and piano working in the background. It's not I don't think they were MIDI strings and piano. I think they were real instruments. And
well, they do use a lot of synthesizers on this album, but I do believe most of it is real instruments. I just feel like the synths were done to evoke a lot of the ambient tones on here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
So, like you say, even though this is digitally released only so far, maybe the CD's out, but regardless, it was out digital only for a while, and it was separated into 2 different factions, not because of runtime issues or anything. It was to separate certain songs. The first 8 are considerably shorter, more traditional song-based. These are called the Children, as Nick Cave puts it, while the last 3 are called the Parents. The last 3 consist of 2 longer songs over 10 minutes, and Fireflies, which is a poem set to music. I have to agree in general with your assessment, Cam. Pleasant to listen to. You could almost put it on as background music, despite the mournful, harrowing, some at times, lyrics. It all sounds good. It flows really well together, almost to a fault. Because even though the songs are sometimes hard to tell apart, I'm really happy with it overall, as much as I could be, because this was a completely surprise release. 2 weeks before it came out, it was announced, so it's definitely a firm favourite of mine at this point.
Yeah, I can't say this is going to be a good introduction to Nick Cave, like it more or less is for me. The only album of his I'd heard before this was the double album, The Abattoir Blues, The Lyre of Orpheus. And that's definitely a legitimate rocker. And it's completely different from this album and from, I understand, the two that came before it. And I did listen to Skeleton Tree in between listens to Ghosteen. And even that one was still pretty different because that one had a bit more percussion and such. So.
It did, and it had a lot more acoustic guitars and conventional instruments. Parts of the music here feel more like new age or definitely ambient centric. We've mentioned before that there's almost no percussion on this album. There's not many guitar lines or bass lines.
Yeah, so it is very emotionally impactful when you pay attention to it, and because of that, it's very rewarding when you pay more attention to it. But that also means it's not the kind of album you can just put on casually and understand what there is to like about it.
Definitely not.
Yeah, I
feel like this is a one where you have to prepare yourself or condition yourself beforehand before diving into it.
Yeah, and the closing track for me was a real sucker punch, a real gut punch of emotion with Nick Cave singing a story. I don't know offhand if it's a real Chinese folktale or if it's something that he made up or just compiled from other sources, just about a woman whose young child dies, and she asks the Buddha how to... It was the Buddha, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, she asks how she can...
Some wise elder, at least.
She asks how she can either save her son or just get over the grief, and he tells her to go to every house in the village and collect a mustard seed from the houses where no one has died. And she goes around and she doesn't collect a single seed, and just that realization that she's not alone is what helps her move on. And then just knowing what happened to Cave's son, and just knowing that this is him saying more or less, this is how I learned how to cope is it's really touching. And that getting through that song is what helped me realize the album has a lot more to say than it seems like it does on the surface.
For sure. And that's definitely true, that I believe that has helped him cope in general, because he has been reaching out to fans a lot more in the last few years. He started up a blog where he directly answers fan questions. He went on a tour, Conversations with Nick Cave, where he did a Q&A session with people just talking about stuff, helping people, realizing how much his music has touched and helped people throughout the years. I feel like these have all been coping mechanisms for his loss, and I believe this album has too. Even if it doesn't sound as visceral as Skeleton Tree did, this is definitely a continuation of his mourning period. It was actually the title track, Ghosteen, that was more of a sucker punch to me. Maybe not on first listen, because it's definitely definitely similar musically to the first 8 songs, but lyrically, some of the imagery that he paints is just heart-wrenching. He talks about 3 bears, a mother bear who's on control of the remote, who are watching TV, a father bear who floats, and a baby bear who's just gone. And he also says how there's nothing wrong with loving someone you can't hold in your hands. These lyrics, I can't lie, they got to me on first listen. It makes it hard to even start the second disc, as it were, because I feel like he just one-ups the whole with that and Hollywood, as you say. I feel like the lyrical comparisons with his own life are ramped up a bit, and like, as you say, when you focus on this more, the lyrics definitely reveal a lot more. I'm surprised vocally by Nick Cave here in general as well, because he's usually in a... At this point, he's got like a trademark baritone voice that he croons or even speaks sins or toxins a lot of his songs in, like in Fireflies in particular, which is like a poem he wrote where he just talks through it, set to music. He hits a lot of surprising high notes, not dissimilar to a band like Sigur Rós, which feel like emotional crescendos on a lot of these songs. The harmonies, the backing vocals, they're just really high up there, and I was not expecting that. You get some harmonies similar to that in Skeleton Tree, but they're not as emotionally heart-wrenching as some of these are. I don't know why, but it really surprised me, and I feel like I'm already preconditioned to give this a high score due to my involvement with his musical career in general. I'd give this a 9. Maybe I need more time for it to settle in, for it to raise up to the 10 out of 10 level I give to the Push the Sky Away and Skeleton Tree, but a 9 for me.
Yeah, and right now I've settled on an 8 out of 10. It's already proven to be more rewarding on repeated listens, but since I'm not as much of a Nick Cave fan, I don't have the deep history and relation to his music, so I don't want to beat this album into the ground to the point where I get sick of it, just for the hope that my score might raise a little. So I'm just going to leave it there for now and then see if it grows over time.
Thanks for listening to Busted Speakers, and yeah, thanks for keeping with us.